the molecular mandate and the social imperative, a first principles synthesis of sociobiology and biology. The convergence of texts spanning molecular biology, genetics, developmental biology, and sociobiology reveals three first principles: irreducible, foundational laws that govern all life, from the smallest cell to the most complex human society. These principles dictate that all biological phenomena, including thought and social behavior, are ultimately the expression of molecular information shaped by natural selection in a dynamic ecological context. First principle: life is information, not substance, the law of molecular determinism. The most fundamental truth derived from texts like molecular biology of the cell, bioconjugate techniques, and the ABMGG clinical biochemical genetics is that the essence of life is not its physical substance, carbon, water, but the information coded within its molecules. All biological function is the dynamic expression, regulation, and protection of this molecular code. The irreducibility of the code, genetics and biochemistry, information. First, the primary unit of biological inheritance and function is the information encoded in DNA and RNA. Biochemistry, as detailed in Lippincott Illustrated Reviews, Biochemistry, and various genetics texts, is the language of life, a highly structured system where information, the gene, is transcribed, translated, and executed via proteins. Biological reality is dictated by the code. The essential principle is, form follows information. Substance is merely the vehicle for the code. The cell as the self-regulating unit. The molecular biology texts emphasize that the cell is a self-regulating machine defined by information flow, not just inert parts. Concepts like bioconjugate techniques highlight how molecular information must be precisely linked and signaled to generate specific outcomes. Disruptions at this foundational level, errors in gene expression, protein folding, or metabolic pathways, as addressed in clinical biochemical genetics, are the root causes of disease, the biology of cancer, and inherited conditions. Pathology is a breakdown in molecular information processing. The computational imperative. The existence of the Encyclopedia of Bioinformatics and Computational Biology affirms that biological systems are fundamentally computational. Life processes, from gene expression regulation to neural network firing, are based on algorithms, logic gates, and data processing. This reveals the principle that life is a complex, optimized algorithm designed to maximize the replication and fidelity of its underlying molecular code. Understanding life requires a mathematical and computational approach, as supported by the analysis of biological data. The development as program execution. The developmental program, texts like developmental biology, show that an organism's life cycle from zero to birth is the sequential execution of the genetic program. Development is not spontaneous. It is the highly regulated, precise deployment of molecular instructions in time and space. The principle is, phenotype is the deterministic, but environmentally modulated output of the genotype's execution. Glial and neural information processing. Even complex functions like consciousness are reduced to information mechanics. Cognitive. Neuroscience texts and works on glial mechanisms demonstrate that thought and consciousness, the biology of thought, are based on electrochemical information transfer within the central nervous system. This transfer is not limited to neurons. Glial cells are critical in regulating the speed, timing, and health of these circuits. The mind is the information network. All thought is regulated signal processing. Second principle. Behavior is adaptive information output, the law of gene-centric selection. This principle bridges the molecular findings with the behavioral sciences, drawing heavily from Dawkins's The Selfish Gene and Wilson's Sociobiology, The New Synthesis. It establishes that all observed behavior, no matter how complex or moral, is fundamentally an adaptive output designed to maximize the survival and propagation of the underlying genetic information. The irreducible genetic interest, the gene's eye view. Dawkins's selfish gene concept asserts the irreducible truth. The gene is the fundamental unit of selection and self-interest. Organisms are merely survival machines, built by genes for their own perpetuation. This lens allows sociobiology to explain seemingly altruistic or non-obvious behaviors like parental care or kin selection as mechanisms by which individuals ensure the survival of genes they share with others. The principle. Altruism is a calculated, often unconscious strategy to propagate shared genetic information, ultimate versus proximate causation. Texts like Sapolsky's Behave clarify the two ways to analyze behavior. Proximate causation, immediate, triggers, hormones, neurons, recent experience, and ultimate causation, evolutionary function. Why did this behavior enhance reproductive fitness in the past? Sociobiology argues that ultimate causation holds the foundational key. The complex interplay of proximate factors, brain chemistry, environment, is merely the mechanism through which the ultimate, long-term genetic strategy is executed. Challenging. Gender and social norms. Hardy's The Woman That Never Evolved provides a critical perspective by applying the gene-centric view to female reproductive strategies, challenging earlier male-centric models. It establishes the principle that evolutionary success requires diverse, complex, and sometimes conflicting strategies within a species, including female-specific adaptations for reproductive success. B. Social organization as an adaptive strategy. The social imperative. Wilson's Sociobiology, spanning his New Synthesis and later work like The Social Conquest of Earth, views social organization, from ant colonies to human cities, as the most successful adaptive strategy for replicating genes. The formation of complex cooperating societies is a feature, not a bug, of evolutionary pressure. The principle. Complexity in social structure is directly correlated with enhanced genetic fitness and ecological dominance. The moral animal and behavioral constraints. Wright's The Moral Animal and Sapolsky's Behave explore how morality, cooperation, and conflict are rooted in these genetic imperatives. Morality is often defined by in-group cooperation and out-group hostility. A strategy evolved to benefit the tribe, the kin group, and its shared genes. The ultimate truth is, human behavioral capacity, our potential for both best and worst, is constrained by the adaptive strategies encoded in our genome. Our culture and morality are attempts to navigate and sometimes override these ancient, built-in genetic predispositions. Third principle. Biological reality is defined by dynamic context, the law of the perpetual environment. The final principle, derived from the historical context of Darwin's The Origin of Species and the modern analysis of the sociobiology debate, emphasizes that the fixed molecular information, principle Y, is meaningless without the ever-changing external pressures that test and filter it. The environment is the ultimate arbiter of genetic success. A. The irreducible role of natural selection as the filter. Darwin established that the core engine of biological change is natural selection, the non-random survival and reproductive success of individuals based on heritable traits. The evolutionary texts confirm that the environment constantly acts as a filter on the genetic variations produced within a population. The principle. Biological reality is the result of differential survival. What exists is merely what worked. In a given past context, evolutionary biology is contingency. Modern works on evolutionary biology underscore the role of contingency and historical circumstance. Evolution is not a straight line toward perfection, but a branching, messy process where what is optimal is purely local and temporary. The principle is, fitness is a temporary, contextual measurement. There are no universal, intrinsically, good or bad genes, only those that enhance survival in the current ecological niche. B. The unavoidable controversy, the sociobiology debate, the gene culture, coevolution. The inclusion of texts detailing the sociobiology debate, e.g. Defenders of the Truth, highlights the critical tension in the field, the interaction between biology and environment, or nature versus nurture. The modern consensus reflected in Sapolsky and Wilson's later work favors gene-culture coevolution. The environment, culture, society, selects for certain genes, but those genes then influence the types of culture that can emerge. The principle: the biological code and the environment are codependent variables, locked in a perpetual feedback loop that shapes human destiny. The primacy of ecological context, Our Inner Ape. Primatologist Frans de Waal's work, Our Inner Ape, reinforces the necessity of ecological context by drawing direct parallels between human and primate social behaviors. Aggression, reconciliation, empathy, and dominance strategies are shared, suggesting they are adaptive solutions conserved across millions of years. This comparison grounds human behavior in the broader, ecological reality of mammalian social competition and cooperation. The final synthesizing principle is, to understand the human animal, one must observe it not only under the molecular microscope, but within the ecological niche it has engineered for itself.